But I have to start at monetary policy. We're talking the Federal Reserve and its shareholders, but, bear with me as I lay out my case. But yearly CPI inflation, which you're fully aware of, is up at a 39-year high of 7%. But if we were to actually use the same method of measuring inflation as we did in the 1980s, it would actually be the highest in history with inflation at 15%. We know that the Fed is talking about raising rates and tapering asset purchases, which in translation, tapering means they slow down their creation or counterfeiting of money. And if you are listening to this program and you don't already know, it is money printing that creates inflation, which means your dollar loses value. And due to the way our monetary system is currently designed, you need continual money creation to keep it going. The catch-22 is this, though. The last thing that the Fed wants is inflation to go out of their control. If it does, there is a complete loss of faith and confidence in their paper currency, or AKA Ponzi scheme, in my opinion. In fact, the Fed eventually wants to aim at bringing interest rates from 0 back to 2% by the end of next year, which would put us back closer to the rates we saw before the pandemic. But that's like spitting in the ocean. It's not going to do anything substantial, and it's often been said that you can't taper a Ponzi. I mean, I personally think that the Fed's painted itself into a corner, and they want to raise rates and taper money printing because they want to get inflation under control. That's exactly what the Fed did in the 1980s. They had to take big actions. Inflation was around 14% using the old method, right? And the Fed had to raise interest rates to 20% to help stop it. But by doing so, they also brought the economy to a standstill and a recession. Today, the markets are drunk on free and easy money and will throw a taper tantrum if the Fed does anything aggressively. If the Fed doesn't act aggressively, inflation continues, stocks and asset prices will continue to rise, and the confidence in the dollar erodes. However, if they do act aggressively, then we are possibly talking about stocks crashing, major recession, and a reduction in economic growth, which the politicians don't want. I personally think the Fed is bluffing. Government deficits are out of control. Public and private debt levels across the board are at record highs. We're looking at a world of hurt, no matter which way this cookie crumbles. Jerry, how long does this game go on? Can the Fed really get things under control? Or are we at an inflection point with our monetary system?
Well, there's an old saying, markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. It's an old John Maynard Keynes quote. And one of the things he got right, that's so true and you make a great point about the Federal Reserve central banking scheme and how it has, in the name of monetary stability, wreaked havoc upon the people's dollar. I mean, the U.S. dollar, the medium of exchange. So there's two parties here. There's the one who's doing the abusing, and then there's the one who's being abused. And I believe that both have a responsibility. So the abuser in this case is the Federal Reserve. It's debauched the value of our currency through its reckless and nearsighted policies. And they are always shielding the large investor class from economic realities through their policies. And then the rest of us are left to face the music. But in addition to the abuser, you also have the abused. And in this case, the abused are those who hold U.S. paper dollars over a long time period. Matt, for those who were around back in 1971, they remember that the average house cost $25,000. 1971, the average income was $10,000. A new car cost $3,500. The average rent was $150 per month. A movie ticket cost $1.50. Okay, so who's abusing the system? Who's destroying and devaluing the currency? How did a U.S. stamp go from 8 cents to the cost that it is now? Gasoline, 40 cents per gallon back in 1971. So who's doing the debauching? Who's the abuser? And the question that every American should be asking is, what has the government done to our money? But until now, the American public, Matt, as you well know, has been largely silent like frogs in the boiling pot, seemingly unaware that they face this ever-increasing hidden, or as some call it, a stealth tax in the form of inflation. So ultimately, the question may not be how long will the abuser abuse his victim. Perhaps the question we should be asking instead is, how long will the abused tolerate abuse from their abuser? When will they speak up? And I don't know when that tipping point comes, but it will come. Of that I'm certain.